since America with Eden O'Neill. Yeah.
And good morning, my beautiful America. It's Tuesday. It is February the 7th. It is the State of the Union Day. We are anticipating what the great Biden administration will be telling us tonight as we look to Congress, the joint session of Congress, and looking to see Kevin McCarthy's reactions, Kamala's reactions. Oh, and by the way, did you see the New York Times article on Kamala? Oh my goodness, even Hillary Clinton isn't a fan. Everybody's looking and seeing what actually has she done during this time in office. And, as a woman who ran for elected office, and, when she got elected in 2020, everybody looked to her, oh my goodness, the first woman vice president of the United States. But this is what our young women in high school and junior high and college have to look up to. Oh, give me a break. Really? Okay, so we're going to be breaking down these issues first thing this morning here at Common Sense America. If you have not subscribed to this channel, go right over to YouTube, subscribe to this channel, and you can go and see all of the streams I've done, all the live streams I've done with fabulous women who are not Kamala. You can also see all the great next generation students who have not had watered down history being on this show. I love this show because I get to talk about our precious nation, the United States of America. I get to honor our military and our military families and our spouses. I get to raise that flag right behind me and honor our military and our veterans. I am a veteran spouse and I love our veterans. And I'm going to do everything in my power through this show and every other way to make sure that they have the best health care. And you know what? That isn't on the list of the State of the Union tonight. You know what's on the list? The Biden crime family. And that's what we're going to talk about. So I am going to bring over to our show this morning, who I absolutely love. I am fired up on my Zabar's New York coffee. Hashtag Zabar's New York. No, they're not paying me for this, but I love their coffee. I am hyper this morning because it is the State of the Union. And you know what? They're putting up fences around the Capitol to protect the Capitol from what? The American people? Are you kidding me? But yeah, you couldn't shoot down the spy balloon in Montana? Oh, give me a break. Okay, here we go. I'm fired up. Good morning, sunshine. Welcome to Common Sense.
Hi, Eden. So great to be back on with you. Love your energy here first thing in the morning. So glad to be back on the show, chatting about our full lineup of everything that we are going to talk about today.
Oh, my goodness. Well, for all of us who are tuning in here at Common Sense America, make sure you go over to American Liberty News. The website is going across the bottom of the screen, and Victoria Churchill is basically American Liberty News. She's one of the reporters over there. She covers 2A. She's actually in Pennsylvania. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
And where are you in Pennsylvania?
So I am here today at the Great American Outdoor Show in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It's the world's largest outdoor show. It's one of the NRA's signature events throughout their calendar of events for the year. Super excited. It's actually my first time here. I got in last night, so I haven't been over to the show yet. But I'm excited. It's as close as going somewhere in Virginia, but for some reason, whenever I go anywhere for a weekend, it always tends to be south of me in Virginia instead of to another state like Pennsylvania. And like I said, it's closer than some places I go in Virginia. So I'm excited, made the journey up to Harrisburg. And the show is at the Pennsylvania Farm Show Complex. So I know it's a great event space, lots of vendors. So I'm excited to get over there in a couple hours here this morning.
Oh, that's fabulous. Offline, I believe my cousin will be there. So I will send you her information. She is always on display there at the farm show. So I'd love for you to meet her. Anyway, let's talk about what do you see on the horizon tonight? And I'll tell you what NPR reported as the top, 5-10 things that Biden is talking about tonight at the State of the Union. What are your thoughts? What are you reporting? What are you hearing? What are the Hill rumblings?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to say that America is in a better place today than we were a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
In some aspects, I would actually agree with that, but I think it has nothing to do with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, which they are going to try and claim today. So let's look at a couple things. So first of all, some common sense conservatives and Republicans did elect Republican state legislators, governors. So we have really seen some of these states where these lockdowns were so over the top, and some states where actually the governors fought back against the national lockdowns. The people decided, hey, screw what's happening in Washington, screw what's happening with big pharma, screw what's happening with, the weaponization of the federal government, which is actually something that's going to be talked about on the Hill here this week. The House, under a new Republican leadership, even though it is narrow, the red wave wasn't as big as we expected. We still did take control of Congress, which means that, in my opinion, where America is better than we were a year off is we have stopped the Democrat trifecta in Washington. We have a hard stop for the, like you said, like you like to say, the Biden dictatorship agenda. And because of the work of Republican grassroots activists all across the country, we were able to take back some very key swing seats that did, in fact, give us the majority. As well as some hardline conservatives in Congress who, did end up giving McCarthy the speakership, but it was really a battle where they did want to make some changes to the legislative process, which makes it a lot friendlier for the American people. It means that we have to have bills around one certain topic. We can't have these massive like pork barrel legislation.
Yeah.
As you know what it's called on the Hill.
Yeah.
So that is how the American people are better off. Because they made some good choices, further on down the ballot box. And, I'm excited to see where that takes us. We've already seen Sarah Huckabee Sanders is going to be given the Republican State of the Union response. She's the first female governor of Arkansas. She's the youngest governor, I believe, just in the entire country, if not definitely the youngest Republican governor in the entire country. Obviously, her father, Mike Huckabee, definitely, I'm sure, helped her out with the family name and prominence, but she is an accomplished woman in her own right, which I think a lot of people on the left will dismiss. They'll say, oh, it was just handed to her on a silver spoon because of her dad. No, actually, she worked in Iowa like I did. She worked in Iowa for her dad's campaign. She's a seasoned operative. She's a successful woman. She knew how to handle the wrath of the White House press corps when she served as Trump's press secretary. And she loves the administration admirably, which not a lot of people can say they did. So, she has her own running list of accomplishments. And she is well deserved to be serving in that role. And, when we talk about contrasting this vast liberal leftist agenda, she is showing them how it's done. She is kicking out CRT out of schools. She's giving people school choice. She's kicking out the woke leftist agenda with, Latinx in state governing documents. So she is making the right steps to, as you would say, for common sense governance, common sense government. And so, that is people like her why I think our country is better off than it was 12 months ago. But like I mentioned in the beginning, it's not going to be because of Washington. It's not going to be because of actions taken by the White House.
Right. Let me ask you this. So I was looking at NPR and lamestream media, legacy media. Don't shake me for this one. But they gave a list of the top things that Biden dictatorship will be discussing tonight. First thing, China. Shocker. Second thing, climate. Shocker. Third, COVID-19 and health. Education. Economy. Notice economy is like fifth down, where yesterday I read historical precedents of the State of the Union, and the economy was Reagan, it was Clinton, it was Obama, it was George H.W. and George W. Bush's top statements during their time period, during their presidencies. But this president is focusing in on midway down. Next one I want to talk to you about, gun violence. So he's going to be bringing that up tonight. What are your thoughts as you talk? You are all things 2A. Talk to me about what you expect to hear out of him tonight, and how does that look for us rednecks down here in the South?
Well, I think it's pretty predictable what his remarks are going to be. He's going to call for Congress to pass an assault weapons ban. He's going to talk about the, so-called common sense gun reform bill that was passed through Congress last year that ended up on his desk that he signed, where, over a dozen weak Republicans in both the House and the Senate decided to, in the wave of a national tragedy, which it was, I think no matter where you are on the side of the aisle, the murder of innocent children in their school is a tragedy. That is something that we can all agree on. Now, obviously, in the wake of that, in the kind of pressure of the public, of the media, there were Republicans that caved. Now, honestly, a lot of them are not returning to Congress this year, which I find fascinating. But, I think it's good for us gun owners, like I said, where we have the House Republican caucus, the hardliners that will be that hard stop against any legislation. And a lot of those hardline members that, the media likes to pick on, like, say, Lauren Boebert of Colorado, those are members that will make sure to, again, be that hard stop for any dangerous legislation that comes out of the House. Now, the other thing that is interesting to see is actually a lot of these tragedies, and again, that I think that's something we can agree on, these are all tragedies, these instances of absolutely mentally unstable people committing acts of violence, which again is what it is, right? That's not what the mainstream media calls it, but that's what it is. It's violence by crazy people. Now, these instances actually happen in places where gun control is the most stringent. If gun control stopped these crimes, we would not have them in places like, oh, by the way, DC. We've had several shootings pretty close to me. I live outside of DC by a few miles, and there's been an uptick in violence. There's been reportings that it's been kind of more gang related and targeted, which I guess is a little bit better, but it's still something to be aware of happening in your own community, right? And we actually just ran a piece this weekend by John Lott of the Research Center for Research Crime Statistics. Center for Crime Research Statistics, excuse me. He's one of our great writers, and he wrote about, how, again, California has some of the weakest gun laws where these two most recent mass tragedies have happened. And that is what the mainstream media dismisses repeatedly. And I'm here to call them out on it, right? That's what we do at American Liberty News. We want to be the combat to the mainstream media. And, that's why we run great writers like John that aren't afraid to call people out on it. And, again, in my own backyard in DC, we're hoping to possibly see some revisiting of these gun regulations that exist in the wake of things like Bruin. Maryland was a state that last year, after Bruin was handed down by the Supreme Court, they were supposedly set to revisit a lot of their regulations. But, Maryland was a state that went further to the left, even though they did have a pretty moderate governor in Larry Hogan, who, probably going to run for president based on what he believes his achievements are. But, at the end of the day, he wasn't a radical, rabid leftist. He did still have an R by his name. That is no longer the case in a state like Maryland. So a lot of these governors, I think, like the new Maryland governor, are actually going to echo calls by President Biden. They're going to push their state legislatures to pass these, so-called assault weapons bans. I think we might have talked about this last time because it was right around the time when it was happening, but Illinois passed their assault weapons ban that's being fought in court by a number of organizations, Second Amendment Foundation, National Rifle Association. They're being fought at the county, state, and national level. So, even though gun owners in those states that are less friendly to us may have lost at the ballot box, we're still in the fight legally. And that's a lot of the work that we're covering. So, no matter what Biden says, there is a grassroots army ready to take on him, his cronies, the governors, some of these state legislatures that are state legislators, that are aligned with his radical leftist agenda that he's going to be pushing tonight.
Right. Well, let's talk about something else along the lines of 2A, but a little bit more along the lines of why this and not that. And this is what I'm going to talk to you about. So I was on Twitter this morning and I just typed in SOTU for State of the Union. And Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Donald Trump, Zeb Gore wrote, "The fence is back up around the Capitol for the State of the Union because Biden knows walls work on the ground." Joe Biden is more afraid of Americans visiting their capital than a Chinese spy balloon invading our airspace that could have carried God only knows what. And then Donald Trump Jr. states, when Biden starts talking about unity at the State of the Union, just remember, he's also putting up a fence around the Capitol because that's how he really feels about the citizens he's supposed to be representing. What a joke. You know what it reminds me of, Victoria? It kind of reminds me of Russia or China, which I don't get any warm and fuzzies about whatsoever. It is the People's House, last I looked. But are these members of Congress, are they afraid of people in the District of Columbia who, are carrying illegal guns and are going to start shooting? I mean, I don't want to go too far out here on a limb, but at the end of the day, it's completely reversed. The right will be wrong and the wrong will be right. And why don't we have a wall down in Texas? Okay. And why didn't we shoot that balloon down while I was in Montana? Why did it have to go across all of these amazing military bases, even here in the great state of North Carolina? Fort Bragg, Camp Lejeune, Cherry Point, to get to South Carolina. What are your thoughts on that from the standpoint of our freedoms, our gun freedoms, our rights? But looking at this, what happened to the People's House? It looks like the Republic of China or of Russia.
Well, we are very fortunate in normal times to where we as citizens do have access to our legislators. That is a very inherent American value. It's something that my husband and I actually hold dear because we met on a Capitol tour, as you know. That's how I met my husband, was on a Capitol tour. So Capitol tours have a very special place in my heart. I actually wrote about this last year. One of my first commentary pieces I wrote at American Liberty News when I joined the team was the significance that Capitol tours have to me personally. I spent a summer giving them as an intern on the Hill. Like I said, I met my husband when he was giving one. So I love it. I loved doing Capitol tours as an intern. It was my favorite part of the day, getting to show. I went to college in Kansas, so I was, showing people from America's heartland around their capital. And a lot of the times, they look down on DC, but there is really something special about the building, about everything that goes on in it, and about the impact that you can have even in the smallest roles that you can have, as an intern, as a staff assistant. And I think a lot of Americans, when they do get the chance to go, they really do see that. Even though DC as a whole, they look down on, the Capitol building is a symbol of freedom in the country, around the world, really. I mean, the statue, there's the video that they show in the beginning of the Capitol tours of, it's out of many, one, right? E pluribus unum is the motto, but then also the statue that stands on top of the Capitol dome is called freedom.
Yes.
So that again is something that we can all unite around, no matter what race, color, gender out of two, which gender out of two we are. That is something that we can all value and hold dear. Mm-hmm. Now, it's interesting to point out that when President Biden actually did visit the border, he decided, and his team at the White House decided, to take a picture of him in front of, guess what? The border wall. You can't make this stuff up. He wants the border wall to not exist. Yeah, that is his prime photo of his visit, which Republicans have, beat on him repeatedly for almost 2 years for the fact that he had not visited the border. When he finally did, he took pictures next to the border wall. And, there have been other members, such as Lauren Boebert, who I mentioned before, who actually called out the fact that it's really hard to get a DC concealed carry permit. I think it could definitely be up for debate whether legislators should be allowed to carry and members of staff. I think there's definitely some good pros and cons on both sides of the argument. I know some state legislatures you actually can. Like I said, I went to college in Kansas. I interned in the state capitol in Kansas. Legislators there can carry, but there was an incident. Unfortunately, it was a Republican member who left his gun in his desk unlocked, which I think is not proper firearm handling. So, as gun advocates, we again have to be common sense and say, if you are going to have a firearm, you need to be responsible for that. And if you're not, it gives us all a bad look. So, again, I think there kind of is precedent for that at the state level. But I also know that staffers, when they commute, they have to commute through some of the most dangerous parts of DC. Capitol Hill is not really
Yes.
safe anymore. There's carjackings. There was an Axios reporter that posted on Twitter this week that his car had the rims taken off, like just blocks away from the Capitol. So, I think maybe if you are a staffer or a member, maybe you should be able to. Again, I'm not necessarily sure if we could extend that to the general public. Again, I think that's something that could be debated because there have been gunshots fired on the House floor, which again, I also don't think is.
Yeah.
I don't think that's how to be doing business.
Exactly.
But even in history, there was the incident of the senator that actually beat the other senator with a cane. So as I always say, if you want to commit violence, you will find a way to do it, no matter if you have a firearm or not.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. It's just what a picture. No, you're good. Let's talk about a previous senator who went on to be the first female vice president of the United States, and they claim it was because of her color, and they claim that it was because of her gender. And I was looking at all the news headlines. First American Liberty News talked about it yesterday, and the title is Hillary Clinton says Kamala Harris can't win a presidential primary because she lacks, quote, political instincts. And then New York Post, one of my favorites, next in line to American Liberty, more Democrats leery about VP Kamala Harris. Can't think of one thing she's done. Fox News, Hillary Clinton privately thinks Kamala Harris lacks, quote, political instincts to win a primary, says the report. And then finally, The Hill, allies defend Harris after critical New York Times piece, this is all stemming from that New York Times piece that came out. But I want to say something before we toss it back to you in this regards. Harris made history in 2020 when she was elected the first Black and first Asian American vice president. I didn't think she was Black. I thought she was something else, but I didn't think she was Black. So I'm questioning that first and foremost. I don't know if you can speak to that, but then also I'll say this, but has she struggled while in office with frequent staff turnovers? Yes. Coupled with reports of toxic office environments? Yes. Along with the frequent gaffes and word salad statements. Oh, the word salads. And criticism of her work as the administration borders are. Okay. All of these things are so... They don't line up to me. And anybody with common sense will say, well, hold a second. What is going on here? What is going on here at the highest powers of government? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there's a couple different things we can look at. First of all, Hillary Clinton is no winner herself. So I think the fact that she is criticizing people and their ability to win elections, I find that a little funny in itself. Now, I thought it was unique that she said Kamala couldn't make it through a primary because that is something that Hillary Clinton has experience doing. So we will give her that. Personally, as you know, I spent 14 months in Iowa working on the Trump reelect. I spent 10 months in Iowa City. Last 4, I was in Des Moines. Where I was in Iowa City, I had the blessing of, in terms of the primary, I was actually able to sit back and watch all these Democrat campaigns roll through town. Iowa City was a preferred stopping ground for them, as it is home to the University of Iowa, one of the more liberal in the country. Similar to my own college, University of Kansas, it's kind of the liberal dot in a red, conservative, purple state, depending on who you talk to. Mm-hmm. But it was interesting to see all these Democrat campaigns hire staffers, and I did a lot of tabling on campus in my role, working a lot with their youth engagement. And so kind of every week, kind of in the main strip on campus, there'd be different tables set up for all the different varying candidates. There'd be a Pete table, there would be a Tulsi table, there would be a Kamala table. And it was kind of interesting seeing, them pop up. And then when their candidate dropped out, they would go away and you'd never see them again. And I was out there with my Trump table, either myself or one of my great students that I had the chance to work with. We were out there every week, multiple times a week. So, as far as I remember, she did not make it very far through the primary that year, because I remember seeing her organizers on campus and then not seeing them for a while when there was a lot of other people still there. Right. So that is something that you have to remember, is that she did not make it very far. Now, obviously, Iowa, interestingly, is no longer on the Democrat primary schedule, and neither is New Hampshire, because the Democrats, we've seen their top performers in both the Iowa First in the Nation caucus as well as New Hampshire, the First in the Nation primary. They have not gone on to become their nominees. So they have kind of looked past history and they have chosen South Carolina as their first state. It's still on the Republican primary state schedule. I believe currently it falls third, and you can correct me on that if I'm wrong. But the Republicans have kept Iowa, then New Hampshire, then South Carolina. So the Democrats have switched to just South Carolina first. I think they're hoping to engage more of a minority vote in that. I think Jim Clyburn being a leader within the Democrat Party, I think definitely had some stake in that. He is known for hosting his, I think it's his fish fries down in South Carolina.
Right.
That, along with the Iowa State Fair pork burgers, those are kind of the two things you have to do to become president. And, I will give Kamala this. There were t-shirt shops in Iowa City posting shirts with, Iowa, for some reason you have to come here to become president. And unfortunately that no longer applies to her party anymore. So that's interesting, because that was a Kamala quote that did persist, to borrow a great leftist phrase from our favorite Elizabeth Warren, persistence. That is a phrase that persisted in Iowa, was that quote from Kamala from the 2020 cycle, which I thought was very interesting. But often in history, we see even the best vice presidents not make the best presidents. And that is just the best ones. And right now we have one of the worst ones. So even if the best ones have set a pretty high threshold, and again, even still kind of fallen short at times, I think Kamala has her threshold is about at the floor.
Well, I just question, what is she doing? I mean, what do you hear on the Hill? What are the rumblings that you hear? I mean, because the legacy media and then a lot of the radio shows that I listen to, everybody's questioning that. And whenever we do see her, she cannot get out an articulate sentence. And when she does get something out, it doesn't make any sense. And, comms here, strategic communications here, and you write for a living and you are constantly analyzing. What are we missing here? Like, what's the mark that we're missing here? I'm trying to figure that one out. That's my first question. And my second question is, if something would happen to our 80-year-old current president, would the parties and the powers that be allow her, or would they appoint somebody similar to Gerald Ford, similar to that whole time period? What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a couple interesting notes. So first of all, I think really nobody in the Biden White House can kind of have a clear sentence, whether that's the president himself, whether that's Kamala, whether that's Karine Jean-Pierre. I think, ironically, their best communicator is probably Pete Buttigieg, and his communication is covering up for a bunch of mess ups that he has. So it's not in a very flattering light, but I think in terms of, block and bridge and handling attacks that come upon you, I think he's probably, ironically, one of their best. So in terms of the White House itself, that there's not a lot there. So in the low standard that they set for themselves, I guess I would probably put Kamala next to Pete as their best communicator. But again, that threshold is so low between the president and the press secretary. And as a Republican, I'm very happy about that, because I think historically Republicans have lacked in their ability to communicate politically. And I think right now, because the standard is so low, we're actually doing pretty well. We have a diverse slate of voices, and because this time we are going to be the ones with a very wide open, rambunctious set of primary candidates, all communicating some version of the Republican message. I think there is going to be a lot more people hearing a Republican point of view, which I think is good for us, because the Democrats aren't going to have much. And, if Biden chooses to run, I assume he will kind of be the de facto nominee. Some people may choose to challenge him. But if he doesn't, I think a lot of people in the media will look to people like Kamala and Pete, who, again, based on the standard that's set, they're good, but the standard is set so low that they're actually not very good. And you do ask a very good question of what is she doing, because I don't see much. She had some migrants dropped out off at her doors a few instances last fall. She didn't even come out to say hi to them. So I don't know if she was home, but at least she should have done that, because there's a lot of TV cameras at her front door, and she should have used that. Brought them out some soup, brought them out some blankets, maybe pitched up a couple tents in her front yard. But that's not what she did. So even when the media literally comes knocking at her door, she does not take that opportunity to do some positive messaging for the administration, which I think is a great kind of disservice to the office. It's interesting, technically, because she was appointed a senator in California. She does theoretically have legislative experience, but actually most of her experience is executive. And I think typically when you look at a vice role, whether that's vice president, a lieutenant governor, you need somebody that goes on the Hill, has a reputation with legislators. And, Mike Pence, he actually did that very well.
Yes, he did.
Being a former congressman himself, I know his wife was very active with the Republican wives groups and prayer caucus and things like that. And you need to be out there yourself. And if you have a spouse that is politically active, they definitely help in that presence. I know, even here in Virginia, obviously Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears is there all the time. She's all over the state. She's in the legislature. She's advocating for legislation. We ran a piece at the Republican Standard, which is one of our Virginia sister publication to American Liberty News, where, she was advocating for a school choice bill. So, you look at Winsome, she's also a first-time, woman of color in that role. Winsome Sears is a great role model. Kamala
she
is among her role models of how to be in that second in command role. You have to have an active presence. You have to interact with the grassroots. But, again, even talking about spouses, Governor Youngkin's wife does a bunch of fundraisers for local candidates. If the governor is busy governing, which he should be, and he's unavailable to make all of these engagements where he is asked, his wife is more than willing and able to step in. And I've seen her perform very well on behalf of some great candidates that we have in the Commonwealth. So, it really is a team effort. And I know even in the Trump-Pence days, his nephew, John Pence, he would always step in. Obviously, Karen Pence, his wife. So again, it is a family affair. And again, it helps, right? His brother is a congressman, so that definitely helps him on the Hill, I'm sure. But it has to be engaged. And I don't see anybody from the administration engaging really with media, with grassroots, with grass tops, legislators, building coalitions. Whether you are in an official capacity or in even something like a spouse capacity where your role is unofficial, but you are their de facto voice in a lot of those rooms. That can be very powerful. And I think Republicans are doing a much better job of that right now, and, have been for the past 5-6 years up to and throughout the Trump administration. And the Biden White House is lacking in that pretty significantly.
One thing I was reading on one of my feeds this morning, as a communications professional, as a public relations professional, as a former candidate for an elected office, as someone who's done strategic communications for OPM, members of Congress, candidates, one of the things that stood out to me on this feed I was reading through is, public speaking, top thing that you need in almost every field. And I sat there and said, I wonder if we shouldn't just hit refresh on those who are going to be giving speeches tonight and those who continue to have to give speeches because of their position. And I'm not trying to be so critical as to, public speaking is an art. But when I was running for elected office, I love to be up in front of people. I love speaking. I love talking about the issues. I loved engaging. But if you're going to run for a certain office, you have to have a certain level of being comfortable in your own skin and understanding what you're talking about. And I think that is certainly lacking. She may be a certain age, she may be a certain leader, but I don't see her comfortable in anything. I don't see her bringing any type of presence that, as a woman leader, I look for in a woman leader, someone who's articulate, who understands the issues, who's convicted on the issues, and I don't hear her convicted on anything. So that's what I am looking for. And you brought a great example. Winsome Sears, Marine, love it. Female Marine, love it. Someone who loves her guns, love it. And someone who advocates for an issue I'm very passionate about, and that's our veterans in the great state of Virginia. So well done on that. We're going to end this segment because I know you got to go to a very exciting event, and I don't want to keep you. But one final question. Kansas City Chiefs or Philadelphia Eagles?
I'm going 110% in for the Chiefs. Bought my husband a jersey earlier this year. We're both, we've both lived all over the great United States, and we both went to college in the University of Kansas, and we have enjoyed some very good Kansas sports within our time, kind of being affiliated with Kansas. And for both of us, really, I think most people, when they ask us where we're from, we for some reason say Kansas. For him, it was the first place where he came. He's from England, so it was the first place where he moved in the U.S. was to Kansas. And for me, that's probably the place where I've spent the most consistent and most formative years of my life, outside of where I live right now in the greater DC area. So I'm all in for the Chiefs. We're very excited. I think, unfortunately, where we are in DC, we're going to a watch party where there'll be more Eagles fans than Chiefs fans.
Yeah.
But we are hoping for a good Chiefs win. We do have one recent Super Bowl. We're hoping to double that. And like I said, we've enjoyed some great Kansas sports. I think it was my sophomore year of college. The Royals won the World Series. We had the KU National Championship last year with the Jayhawks winning, which, after 2020, we were number 1 ranked going into the tournament, which didn't happen because of COVID. So that was a big kind of vindictive win, that kind of a chip on our shoulder that we had, that we didn't get to go in the tournament as the number 1 overall seed. And we're actually, our football team did pretty decently. We went to a bowl game this year, which hadn't happened in over a dozen years. So there's kind of a good, there's something in the water in Kansas, and hopefully it's going to translate over to the Chiefs. And yes, I do know Kansas City is technically in Missouri, but the Kansas do claim the Kansas part of the name. So there are Kansas teams we're cheering for them.
I figured you knew that. Yeah, my husband and I last night made a bet. With growing up in Philadelphia, or growing up in southeastern Chester County, I honestly was always a Giants fan. I never was an Eagles fan. I never got on that bandwagon. But then last night he said, "So who are you rooting for?" I said, "I'm going to go for the Eagles. I'm pretty excited for them." And he said, "Fine, I'll go for the Kansas City Chiefs. Then we're going to make a bet." So we're always a house divided. Army-Navy game every year. He's Army, I'm always Navy. So we're making bets as we go along. But anyway, Victoria Churchill, American Liberty News. Follow Victoria on Twitter, Pro2A, writer and editor. And then you can follow American Liberty News now on LinkedIn and Twitter and all the social channels. I'm so glad to have you. Have a wonderful time in Harrisburg, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for a great, wonderful show, and we'll do it again soon.
All right, sounds good. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Bye. And for all of those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. I am Eden Hill. Make sure you go over to my YouTube channel. Follow me at Common Sense America with Eden Hill. Also, go over to Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. I am all over, and we are live streaming on every morning, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern time. I love being here with each and every one of you. We're going to take a quick break. It is about 20 minutes till 10. It is Tuesday, February the 7th. Hashtag SOTU, State of the Union, which that stands for. Hashtag Hill Happenings. Victoria Churchill works a lot on Capitol Hill, and she has events called Hill Happenings. So make sure you go and follow her. On that note, I'm going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. Thanks for joining Common Sense America.
It's time for Common Sense America with Eden Cornell. Yeah.
And this is Common Sense America. I'm Eden Hill. Thank you, Will Baker, for your music. Absolutely love it. It is 9:42 a.m. Eastern Time. It is Tuesday, February the 7th, and we are getting ready for the State of the Union tonight. If you have not had a chance to just kind of review what the president will be speaking about tonight, I just wanted to do a quick rundown with you. The key issues that he intends to speak about tonight are China, climate, COVID-19 and our health, education, economy, gun violence, immigration, opioids, policing, reproductive rights, and the Ukraine. On that note, I will be talking more about the State of the Union. I'll be doing some clips today on my social media. I'll probably also talk more with Victoria offline, and we'll do a breakdown tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to be bringing over Prime Minister Salih Hudayar, who has been on the show a couple times. He's going to be talking about the Chinese balloon. A lot of people are still talking about it, and so we are going to talk about it because there's a lot that needs to still be uncovered. The layers are needing to be uncovered, and they have not been uncovered. So Salih will be joining us tomorrow, and we're going to be breaking down everything from China, the balloon, and also what happened tonight during the State of the Union. But on that note, as you heard Victoria and I talking about the Super Bowl this weekend, it is Philadelphia Eagles, Kansas City Chiefs, and the Kelsey brothers. I've been following the story. So many people are petitioning that the Kelsey mom do the coin toss for the start of the Super Bowl. So I wanted to read you a fun story as we head into the rest of our Tuesday. It's a fun story. I was really kind of excited to hear that, one, you have two brothers playing against one another in the Super Bowl. But two, I just love how they've been interviewing the mom, talking to her. So this Super Bowl will be a family affair for the Kelsey family, and this is on NFL, The Spun by Sports Illustrated. It has been well documented that the Chiefs tight end Travis and Eagles center Jason brothers will be the first set of brothers to play against each other in the Super Bowl. Their mother, Donna, will be in attendance at State Farm Stadium watching her boys battle it out. There's actually a petition out there, though, advocating for Donna to do more than just watch the game. The people who signed it want her to participate in the pregame coin toss. During an appearance on her son's podcast this week, Donna at first was hesitant to agree to that arrangement, but then said she would on one condition. She, quote, said, "I would if the two of you say that it wouldn't be a distraction to you," she said. It seems unlikely that this will come to fruition, but that doesn't mean there aren't people rooting for her to be on the field before Sunday's game. Many people have said, "Love this idea. Come on, get her in there. Mama Kelsey is a legend," added another. "Make it happen, NFL," said a third. "And how about it, NFL commish?" asked a fourth person. "Even if Mrs. Kelsey doesn't take part in the coin toss, we're betting she gets plenty of camera time on Fox during the game." And indeed, I believe she will. It's been fun to follow this story over the past couple weeks. And, like you heard me say, my husband and I are placing a bet. He's going to go with Kansas City. I'm going with Philadelphia. I think for the first time ever, I'm going for Philadelphia, but I am proud of the hometown team. I'm excited for them, and I'm excited to see. And I'm hoping that Jason's wife does not go into labor during the game. She is very advanced in her pregnancy, and she's bringing her, I believe, her OBGYN with her just in case. So it will be an interesting Super Bowl, to say the least. As we prepare for the State of the Union tonight, I don't know how many of you will actually be tuning in. You may just catch the highlights here, Common Sense America, or on your radio on your morning drive, or you may catch it later in the evening on one of your news shows, or as you're checking out the evening news, you may catch a couple snippets. But one thing I will keep in mind is I'm always watching the posture, the demeanor, the reactions, and how people interact with one another. The body language says a lot. So tonight, as you watch the State of the Union, I know many people, when I used to live on the Hill, we'd all used to get together, have State of the Union parties I didn't do this, but a lot of people did. You take shots every time they say a certain word. So I will be interested to see. I'm not going to do this, but I'm going to say probably just drink water or my coffee so I can stay up and not fall asleep during Gramps' commentary. But I will say, I wonder how many times he will blame Trump, and then also take credit for Trump. So I would be interested to hear that. And I also be interested to see if he's also going to basically, in his own way, say he's running again for president. Do you think he should? That's a great poll that we should probably talk about. Should he run for re-election being 80 years old? I think there comes a time, seasons of life. It's definitely very biblical. So on that note, I will leave you here. It is 9:50 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm so glad you guys joined here at Common Sense America. I look forward to seeing you here back again tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you then. Have a great day.
It's time for Common Sense America with Eden.